Hello viewers, this week's Daily Race A, a very close and contentious race with some very intriguing moments. Here we are at Trial Mountain with 10 selectable cars, as you can see, and some very intriguing settings, mainly that of an incredibly strong slipstream, which made for incredibly close yet somewhat artificial racing. The main thing here was that it was almost impossible to escape from the group behind, as you can see. It also created some very contentious moments. So let's head into the first race here. In the BMW M3, this seemed to be the strongest car for this race. So as I say, 10 cars you can choose for this one, and they're the 10 cars that have come up quite a few times now in Gran Turismo. They're supposed to be roughly balanced, and I guess they are to some extent, but there's definitely stronger and weaker cars. And the previous time this race came up, the LFA and the M3 were the strongest, and that seems to be the case again. Now, as I've mentioned in the intro, slipstream, super important, super strong. They seem to have a different setting enabled for this race, and specifically only for this race. And as you can see, on the straight, which is a very long one, it's almost impossible to escape the clutches of the car behind. So all I can do, really, is move to the inside, go defensive, and hope that I can dive back up the inside and keep the position, which I kind of do here, although German Kiwi there with a switchback on the exit up into the tight chicane here at the top of the hill. I am just going to resume the lead. But that kind of gives you an idea of how difficult it is to remain in the lead on this race. So yes, I qualified on pole position, but this kind of plays a lot differently than most traditional races, where if you simply have the pace you can pull away, but that isn't really evident here. It's super tricky to remain in the lead. So onto the main straight, end of lap 1. You can see the train of cars behind. There's not much I can do about it. Again, going defensive, forcing this guy to the outside, but the slipstream so strong, he's just going to pull clear and fully take the lead before we move into turn 1. That's fine, we can just remain in the position for now and try to fight back as soon as we can. It's going to happen here, and pretty much immediately as he goes quite wide on the exit of that fast sweeping corner. So back to the lead, and it's just going to be a tactical battle from here to the end of, I mean, if we can escape, then great, we'll just escape from the pack, but that's incredibly hard to do. It all matters here. This is the really important bit of the track, I would say. And ideally you need to have a gap. I mean, I've got a 7/10 gap here going onto the straight. As you're about to see, that is about to be evaporated incredibly quickly, as they do come quite close here to the overtake. 2/10 behind by the end. So 5/10 gain in one straight kind of gives you an idea. And yeah, I mean, you need to have a 7/10 gap going onto that straight. It's not very easy to do that. End of lap number 2, still in the lead, although there's a good 7 or 8 cars in fairly close contention. Third place inadvertently gives second a bump there, and I'm not sure he would have had the momentum otherwise, but he does now go through into the lead. So down to second again. I'm presuming this time around he's not going to make the same mistake, but he has got a penalty. So something different here, as he seems to go quite slow there. So we're going to go up the inside as he tries to turn in, but we've got the inside line, and just Bob goes through as well. So I'm not sure what that penalty was for. It seemed like maybe the apex of turn 1. I guess that must have been what it was. And the 0.5 is going to hurt his race towards the end of this lap when he serves that penalty. So now, back straight once again. This time, you can see the bump drafting going on. So they're both pushing each other up the straight, or third is pushing second, and the speed difference is absolutely outrageous. And there's literally nothing you can do about it. And it's one of those races where you just kind of have to stay in the fight. You're not always going to be able to just command the race from first place and just stay there. Sometimes you're just going to have to accept being shuffled back a little bit. And we see the opportunity there at the top of the hill, over the crest and down the other side. The space was open, went for the move, and moved that back to second. And I must say, I feel a lot more comfortable in second. I think second's quite a nice position to be in this race. given the slipstream. You can always just slingshot past kind of at will, whenever you kind of want to. But in third place, it's always a bit trickier to do it from that far back. So not the best line through the final chicane here. Onto the main straight. 5/10 behind as the German there serves the penalty. So I'm not going to be close enough to go for a move here into turn 1 or on the straight. But that could play into my hands as we wait for the final straight. But that's not going to happen here because Bob is going to make an error on the grass, comes back on, and he turns right into a left-hander and meets the wall. And that's that. I mean, I still have a threat here from the Danish driver behind, who's 8/10 behind. But fortunately enough for me, that gap was just big enough that he wasn't able to really go for a move. I mean, he could have gone for a massive dive bomb here. Probably wasn't going to work. And so, this race was really all about keeping my nose clean and not getting a penalty and not spinning out. Just remaining in the fight. And fortunately, we did enough to win the race. So a good start there. We're going to move over to the Scuderia, the Ferrari F40, the car with the highest performance rating for this race, interestingly. But I don't think that really means too much because I don't think it is the strongest car, but I want to try something different. It does seem good in a straight line. Of course, not enough to negate the slipstream difference, but it's definitely a bit quicker than the M3 in the straight at least. But Trial Mountain is a mixture of straights and corners. You need a bit of a mixture, and I would say that this car is as good as the M3 in terms of traction. So the M3 there, pretty much hanging it around the outside, and it kind of shows you the difference there. So a good move. We're going to try and hold it around the left-hand side. Not quite going to work, as we're then going to get shuffled back to second. And as I touched upon in that previous race, and when you've got really close pack racing like this, I think second place isn't too bad, but when you start getting shuffled down to third, fourth, the chances are it's going to become increasingly difficult to get back to the lead. So we're going to go immediately back to the front. We're going to try and command the race from the front as much as possible. I think the most time we spend in the lead, the better, as we're kind of away from the trouble. Now Bob going for the bump draft there. I was prepared to just defend every move, but actually went for a bump draft there, interestingly. So that's something you have to be aware of, I suppose. Sometimes players will just go past you. Sometimes they'll bump draft you and try to work with you to pull away. I was in more of a defensive mood here, just trying to stay in the lead and not really too concerned about trying to pull away from anyone, because I kind of deemed it near enough impossible to do anyway. Coming down the hill here, again, going defensive. Perhaps don't even need to do it, but if anything, just trying to bunch up the pack and just trying to roll them up a little bit. We're coming down the hill towards the final chicane. Look at the run there from the BMW on the outside. We have got the inside line though. Is it going to be enough? I'm going to let him have the position here. As we say, you can afford to remain in second and get the slingshot. There's a bit of oversteer on the exit there. Does just Bob. We have a nice run here as we end lap 2. So still remaining in the positions we want to be in, first and second. This is kind of where we need to be. Don't really want to drop down to third and fourth. That's not ideal, especially as we're on the third out of 4 laps now, heading towards the 4th lap. Now German Kiwi going up the inside, it was almost impossible to defend from 2 players at the same time. And so this is where it becomes increasingly difficult, I suppose. And when you have the method of just outright defending, you do draw more players into the fight, and perhaps it wasn't the right strategy to not work together. As now we have a 4 or 5 car fight for the race lead, and therefore you decrease your chances of winning the race. So heading down towards the final chicane, lap number 3. 1 lap to go after this one. And unfortunately I make a really stupid mistake there and push Just Bob on far into the corner. And that just opens up the gap to German Kiwi now, who has 1.4 second gap. All we can do is just push Bob. I'm just going to try to get him a lot closer again. Down the back straight. A couple of pushes and he's back in the slipstream and back in the fight. And immediately the gap is back down to 0.5 or less than to the leader. I'm going to go for a massive dive bomb here. temporarily in the lead, but there's no way we can hold it there. We're going way too hot into that corner. Back to third with only a couple of corners left to go as we head into the braking zone for the final chicane. Bob, is he going to go for a move here? Not quite. German Kiwi just holds him off. There's always the potential of going for a move there as the final chicane, as Hugh Hattrick does. But thankfully here, I have the slipstream of the car in front. And you can see the gap there just gets eroded, and I go back to third just on the finish line. So really, really close race there for third place. Probably could have been first or second, but didn't quite do enough on that occasion. Now the SLR McLaren up next. Let's see what this car can do. As as I go through this left-hander in the tunnel, I must report that the Titanic had a better turning circle when it tried to avoid an iceberg. This thing is a bit clunky, let's put it that way. It's quite good on the straight, but anything resembling a corner, it takes an eternity to get going. And so that would be my main struggle. Although, in this kind of race, anyone has a chance. That's the intriguing thing about it. This race has come up a few times in the past. I think previously they did a 10-lap version of it. I think the 4-lap is fine. And the 4-lapper is about as long as you need it to be. The 10-lap one probably a bit too long. But yeah, this kind of combination comes up every now and then. We had one at the Nordschleife recently, these 10 cars. And I'm not sure the balance is quite perfect just yet. But it's always an interesting race. As been shuffled back down to second once again. I kind of look for the inside there, really just to try to put him off of his line as I kind of lunge quite late. I was never having the intention of actually going for that move. Just try to put him off his line slightly. And this is the difficult bit now, because I'm back down to second and I just don't have the grip or the handling capability through this twisty sector here. And so there's a chance here that Bob can actually pull out a good gap and I'll get cut adrift. So it's quite an important sector that I get right. And thankfully I take a couple of nice lines here, just playing nice and careful into the limits of the car rather than the car in front. And we've done just enough to stay in the slipstream with the Lexus LFA in very close company behind. I fake to the right, go to the left, which is the inside. 3 abreast here temporarily into the braking zone. Definitely a bit of an overshoot into the turn. And so just Bob with the switch back on the exit. So really good racing. It does promote some good racing. But, I mean, you tell me in the comments. I would say, you can definitely say it's a bit artificial and a bit strong. The slipstream, it brings us all together in the pack. But, you know, if you just turn up the slipstream, then that's, of course, going to happen. Anyway, once again, looking for that inside line. He left car width and I went for it. And this is end of lap number 3 now. He's trying to hold it around the outside, but we're going to run him wide and take the lead of the race. With 1 lap left to go, you see it's a 4-car battle for the race win. So nothing guaranteed here by any means. As Bob goes for the bump draft here, quite interesting. And my first thought as soon as that happened was he's waiting for the overtake on the back straight. It's almost better, as we receive a bit of a touch there. It's better almost to be in second. If you're in the lead, you're kind of a bit of a sitting duck. So what I tried to do here was drive a little bit slowly and a bit defensively, just to shuffle the pack behind slightly and hope that maybe they would bump into each other or cause each other to get penalties, something like that. So slightly negative driving for sure, but we're just trying to shake up the race a little bit, going narrow into this one, and just try to minimise the slingshot effect here as they're right behind me onto the straight. And so this is going to be quite tricky to defend, especially if they start bumping each other. He's actually going to bump me. And here I had quite a fortunate moment where they kind of all bumped each other. I don't think Bob wanted to go into the back of me. He actually wanted to overtake, but ended up bumping me instead. So I actually got the slingshot and the boost myself, and somehow managed to stay in the lead. Although here we receive a bump, and Bob gets a nice, beautiful switchback on the exit, and gains the position back and gets the race lead with only one sector remaining, so this is getting quite tricky now, as we don't really have any straights left to go for some overtakes. However, what you're about to witness is just utter filth. I mean, well, you tell me. If it's defined by FIA standards, then maybe it's not. Because as we come down here into the final chicane, I'm going to go for a move. Going to peel away here to the right hand side, go for the apex. We're going to get there first. Bob is going to turn in. There's going to be contact. It's not going to be the prettiest move of all time, but it is going to be a move. That's how you can describe it. And it is going to be a race win after all of that. Got to the apex first. That's how you race. If you just watch F1, that's how they race. We're going to have to watch that replay. That's me getting to the apex first. You see that bit there? That's me hitting the apex first. And we all know from the FIA and Max Verstappen, once you get to the apex, you can do what you want. Well, there we go. You tell me what you think about that one. I mean, it was a filthy move, but sometimes in F1, I mean, this isn't F1, but sometimes you can get away with that. Anyway, final race. This time in the Jaguar. We're going to try and bring some credits back to the British manufacturer after their recent debacle. Anyway, this car had really good brakes, actually. I wasn't expecting too much from this car. Maybe just like the McLaren Mercedes, a bit of a clunky machine, which is quite hard to navigate through the twisty sections of this track. But anyway, here, the German, they're going for a big move into turn one, and I did not see that coming at all. As sometimes you've got to watch out. You know, in this race, it's quite tricky to predict. As we go for a move here, I think this was actually a good move, and I think he actually just did turn in on that one. I mean, you can be the judge of the previous race, the final corner incident, and you could just say, well, he turned in. But at the same time, you could say, I horrifically dive bombed, and that would be fair enough. So now you can see just how close this is, and I was about to say that when the pack is this close, sometimes it's quite tricky to manage your defence, because you're looking at the guy in second, but it's a guy from third or fourth who can just slingshot through into the lead in one move. So it's quite tricky to keep an eye on so many cars at the same time. I'm going to go defensive here. It's not quite going to work, but we are going to tuck back into the slipstream, and maybe this could work. I mean, look at this. We're going to be 3 abreast, 4 abreast, however many abreast, I don't know. And somehow, with the braking power of this car, we're going to go on the exit into the lead and remain in first place. I don't know how that happened, and I would say that it was probably just down to the braking power of this car and perhaps a bit of luck as well. But just look at the horde of cars behind. I mean, that is a good 6 or 7 cars immediately behind us, and that's going to be incredibly hard to defend. And somehow get a penalty there. I'm not sure exactly what that was for, but we're going to have to deal with that. I'm not going to serve it there at the end of lap 2. It's going to be served at the end of lap 3 instead, which is a bit more of a problem for me, as that would be just before the final lap. And so I'm going to lose quite a lot of time there just before the crucial lap here. I'm going to go for a nice little switch back here against the LFA, and going side by side here with the German. I'll say we're almost about to leave each other enough room, but not quite. As a result, it goes quite wide on the exit. Coming down the hill, still in the lead somehow. That is about to be lost when we serve this penalty. The race is hotting up for sure. I mean, some contentious moments, I think that's fair to say, in this daily race, given, I think, the slipstream. Just that one setting changes everything. It really does, with the way that these races play out. So serving the penalty, dropping down to 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th, almost 6th place here. But look at this. I mean, any one of us 6 here at the front can win this race. You just don't know how this is going to play out as we head up the hill into the tunnel. Looking very, very close indeed into the tight, twisty sector here. Everyone pretty much trying to find a way past the M3. The M3, I would say, is the overall strongest car for this race, and it's the one I'd recommend if you purely want the results. But here we have a bit of a weird moment, a bit of a concertina effect, And unfortunately, as a result of that, we get front bumper damage at a crucial time. So at the end of the back straight, again, 3 abreast in front. I mean, that's happened multiple times in this daily race. But somehow still, the German in front in the BMW remains in the lead. We're going to look for a position here, but it's not quite going to happen. But actually it is. We're going to move up into 4th place with only the final sector remaining. And as we head down the hill, only 3 corners remaining. Levicius there up the inside. And what we're about to witness from him is just pure brilliance. Something Max Verstappen would aspire to achieve, as he's going to go really late on the brakes. Look at this. He's going to get to the apex first. Absolutely incredible move. And obviously that's fair. That's how that works. But looking around the outside here, I said there was still a chance of the race win here with the slipstream. We got quite a good exit. And it's going to be really close to the finish line. It's not quite going to be enough though. Less than a 10th, or about a 10th away. Just under a 10th. And we're going to leave you with this. The ultimate dive bomb from Levicius. It's quite a simple matter of getting to the apex first. Is this a fair move? Or is it not? You tell me. It's definitely not. But you tell me.